Okay, so the last episode, cryptocurrencies are about to tear our society apart, prompted some interesting responses. Terry Stern said, I would love to see a private city run on a model such as Catalonia from 1936 to 39, absent the Civil War. From what I can tell, during this period of time, there were two rival powers in Catalonia, the de jure power of the Generalitat and the de facto power of the armed popular militias. So we had workers' parties, CNT-FAI and POUM, against the PSUC. So workers were fighting against workers, but they were also fighting against the elites. But again, from what I can tell, the people had power, and they also had autonomy. But before we roll up our sleeves and really dig into these comments, I'd like to say that direct democracy is the answer to all of the questions that are about to be raised. Yes, the people, the workers, have to own the means of production, but they also have to have a democratic way to rule themselves. In the private cities that I mentioned yesterday, yes, there are obvious problems. The people need to figure out how to rule themselves democratically. If corporations own the cities, then we're just directly ruled by plutocrats even more than we were before. So for the people like Terry who want to decentralize, then we have to figure out who's in charge of things. Will not the rich assholes simply take over again? And how can we ensure that a system of direct democracy doesn't devolve into something authoritarian? If the people together agree to limit their own freedom too much, what happens then? Terry says, the impetus to decentralize is right on. Decentralization is a democratic trait. Centralization is a fascist trait. Unless the people together form something that looks fascistic, that's what I would say. Private cities seem to be an initial step in separating from the status quo, although the way they are described in the article makes them seem an idea too deeply rooted in capitalist private property to seriously address the wealth gap. So democracy is great if it seriously addresses the wealth gap, seems to be what Terry's saying. Describing economies simply transferred onto decentralized storage systems, but maintaining the profit-driven structures such as private banking, private insurance, and private property does not break sufficiently from what we've got now to be shed of owning class greed. We need to escape systems lubricated by the competition to amass sufficient currency units to purchase the right to live. If life is not an equal right for all humanity and our system permits wealth to clot in very few places rather than spread itself to establish an equitable, global, material standard of living, democracy is beyond our reach. Now this next sentence starts with supplanting the rule of corporate greed with the rule of elegant sufficiency for all. That is the trick right there. Supplanting corporate greed with the rule of elegant sufficiency for all. Will a given group of people all agree together to do that? And will a given group of people agree to keep the playing field level? Because that's what Terry goes on to say, because that requires a level field upon which capitalist games cannot be played. It does us little to be rid of government when the true opponent of working people has never been government, but has always been the rule of wealth, whether expressed through governments or through other means. So everything's fine with democracy if the people are smart enough to figure out that they don't want the rich assholes to run everything. But if the leaders in a democracy, and leaders always emerge, are wannabe rich assholes, then we have problems. Terry ends with, a private city based on cooperative ownership by all would be a solid step, providing experience and energy toward the growth of a true working people's economy. That is what I would love to see. Wayne says, try driving special needs school bus for wide awakening. Jobu Sauce says, private cities? Seems like a sexy repackaging of anti-statism and neoliberalism. Crypto as well. Who has the dominant influence? Same as any market. Those who have the biggest shares. Not average Joe. Who has the biggest stakes now? Rich people and upper middle class people with money to gamble. Most people in the world have zero stake in crypto. So the point is that the same rich assholes will be running things regardless. Javier says, it's one thing to be against the tyrannic actions of a corrupt government. It's another thing to applaud an initiative where the Waltons and the Bezoses and the Musks get to directly govern over the land instead of just bribing politicians to do their bidding. Be careful with that. I think that's a good admonition. The problem we have now is that rich assholes are running everything. And Javier's point is that in this system, they probably still would be. Blockchain is an amazing piece of technology and it can be adapted in many ways to make society a bit more just, but cryptocurrencies are plain old bullshit. There's no point to currencies being decentralized if there are big holders who own most of them and are the drivers of the currency's value. Heck, the little holders don't even own the things. They just invest in crypto, but most don't manage their own virtual wallet. They just give their money to someone else to manage it for them. So no, cryptocurrencies aren't currency, they are stocks. I'm really sad for all the people who bought into the scam. If you bought low and sold high, good for you, but most people will be left with nothing when the big holders start selling and the price plummets to the floor. Be careful, y'all. And again, the problem is that the same people are in control who have always been in control. Jamie says, your show is already getting better. It's nice to see your personality shine through. Maybe that was because of the time I was blinding you with the little lights on my hat that I use when I'm driving truck. My personality was shining through. It's funny when I walk into the office to get my paperwork and I have my hat lights on still and they're like, you're blinding us. Christina says, and personally, cryptocurrency seems suspicious because Elon Musk supports it. I'm not sure if private cities are a good thing because aren't large multinational corporations like Google going to run these private cities? And that seems to be a valid point. Grinning Guy says, no, you have to raise the ownership question. Who owns the city? Is their ownership backed by a violent government apparatus, namely the police state and the military? Well, I don't know. I don't know if these private cities have a police state or military, but it's a fair question to ask who owns these cities, because it seems like big money owns the cities. That's what I can see. Having a city presided over by an unelected owner rather than a mayor sounds like company towns. Owing your soul to the company store? I owe my soul to the company store. Bow, 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 ba-dum, bow. Tennessee Ernie Ford. I wonder how old Grinning Guys is. Guys then concludes with, this is the farthest thing from anarchy that I can imagine. I can see that point. It's almost as though the rich people are revolting from their own system. So to conclude, we do have to address who owns the means of production, and it seems to me that there needs to be a collective who owns the means of production. And the general population of a city or a nation has to be well educated enough to know that the rich assholes shouldn't be allowed to keep running things. If they collectively realize that, but then the brightest ones seem to co-opt things and then become the rich assholes of the future, what to do then? If we ever want to see liberty and justice for all, we almost have to have some kind of a national system. And to scare you even further, we might even need a worldwide system. Right now, we almost have a worldwide system of multinational corporations, and these are not benevolent dictators. If we had a multinational, let's call it worldwide, government, the people would have to own it, and the people would have to run it, and they also would have to know what's good for them. They would have to make sure that the playing field stayed level. First off, I think we'd need a complete reset, and then we would all have to collectively ensure that the playing field stayed level. Not only that, we would have to make sure that wealth inequality never ever again rose to where it is now. I think we all have to admit that this is a pretty tall order. If we escape into cities that are run well and for the sake of the people, including those who are poorer, so that we can all live together, how did he put it? Elegant sufficiency for all, that's how he put it. If we're going to get to elegant sufficiency for all, we're going to have a level playing field within our system, and we're going to have enough clout to make sure that no bigger system swallows up the smaller system. If we have a private city, but we don't have an army big enough to defend ourselves from all the rich assholes in other cities, what's going to happen after that? On one hand, to feel safe, we would need a worldwide system that ensured everyone had the same sort of protection. On the other hand, that doesn't sound very safe if the worldwide system runs amok. Right now, we pretty much have a worldwide system and it's running amok. To start over from scratch would be horribly painful, as pointed out by the writer of the article I read yesterday. But if we don't start over from scratch, how are we going to get rid of the power system that we have now and remove from power all of the wealthy assholes? Escaping into a city sounds appealing, but it's probably only a temporary fix. I'll conclude with this thought. As a lifelong teacher, I've always felt that the answer was education. I've always felt that if we had enough discussions and we had good faith among us, then we would eventually figure it out. The propaganda system now in place almost completely removes that as a possibility. To have good faith discussions with well-educated people who know what's best for them would require us to dismantle the propaganda machine, because the last thing the propaganda machine wants is well-informed citizens capable of critical thinking. Thank you to George Carlin. As a teacher, I don't even know how to begin teaching against the system that's now in place that propagandizes everyone. Supporting good sources of information and thoughtful dialogue is probably our best hope. YouTube is part of the propaganda machine. YouTube is owned by the corporate oligarchy. So it's ironic that I'm trying to get the job done on this platform. They keep warning me it's probably only a matter of time before I disappear altogether. And then what will I have achieved? About the best thing you could say looking back on the ashes of this channel is, well, I tried.